Hi, everyone. It's Jennifer Cuthbert.
My name is Jason Tuckwitz.
From Group of Seven Comics, I'm Jason Lapidus.
And I'm Chris Sanigan, and you're listening to True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Weekend Update for October 4th, 2020, to keep you up to date about the latest and greatest news gathered around the web about Canadian comic book creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you have a comment, criticism, or question, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and we're on YouTube now as well. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the latest news. Sci-Fi Wire spoke with Kelly Fitzpatrick, who was interviewed for the site last June, about the problems faced by colorists when it comes to making comic books. Kelly said, "Deadlines are a huge problem. We are often working on multiple projects to make ends meet at the same time, and people are late. Since being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I've had my fair share of having issues in meeting deadlines. It's hard when you wake up every day and you don't know what your body and mind are going to be like. Mistakes happen, people get sick, and projects get late, and it's often up to the colors to make up the schedule magically." You can read more at sci-fi.com. DC Comics announced the third and final installment of Wonder Woman Earth 1. According to the announcement, the book is a thought-provoking original graphic novel that puts an all-new spin on the Amazon warrior, written by Grant Morrison, one of the most groundbreaking, critically acclaimed, and best-selling writers of his generation, and drawn by Yannick Paquette, an Eisner Award-nominated and Schuster Award-winning, globally recognized Canadian artist. Nathan Fairburn will also be coloring the graphic novel that's slated for stores on March 9th, 2020. You can read more at dccomics.com. CBC Books published their list of the 15 Canadian comics coming out this fall. This includes Awkward Pause by Ryan Harvey, A Slug Story, a book by Mandy and Hannah Kajua, Joe, an adaptation of Little Women, Sort of, by Kathleen Gross, Nova Graphica, edited by Laura Kennens, Kimiko Does Cancer, written by Kimiko Tsubimatsu and illustrated by Keith Knizia, How I Survived 4 Nights on the Ice, written by Serbio Iturgjat and illustrated by Matthew K. Hoddy, OK Universe by Valerie Plante and Delphi Cote-Lacroix, Paul at Home by Michel Rabagliati, The League of Super Feminists by Marianne Mal, Gothic Tales of Haunted Futures, edited by S.M. Biko, The Reckoner Rises Breakdown, written by David A. Robertson and illustrated by Scott B. Henderson, From the Roots Up, written by Tasha Spillett Sumner and illustrated by Natasha Donovan, To Know You're Alive by Dakota McFadzean, Barely Functioning Adult by Michi Nying, and What If We Were by Axel Lenoir. You can read more at cbc.ca/books. The annual Mississauga Comic Expo is returning this October, but not in the physical sense. MCX, which has been reported on the site in the past, showcases artists, novelists, creators, designers, and developers from the Mississauga and Greater Toronto area. This year's online event highlights comic artists and authors including Christina Stens Stewart, Gillian Tamaki, Johnny Christmas, and Sam Maggs. There will also be sketch challenges featuring Jamal Campbell, Sanya Anwar, Marcus Toe, Paris Elaine, Anusha Syed, and Megan Wang. You can read more at mississauga.ca or follow along on Twitter at MCX_comics. The Chronicle Herald reported on the Afterwards literary festival that featured the launch event for Nova Graphica. This site interviewed that book's editor, Laura Kennens, last month. According to the article, when Kennens pitched the idea of Nova Graphica to Andy Brown at Conundrum Press, she saw it as a way to tell these stories and highlight the work of local artists whose work she admired and could provide the kind of variety of content and illustration she was looking for. You can read more at thechronicleherald.ca. DC Comics published an interview with artist Jason Fabok about his work on Batman 3 Jokers. When asked about how he approached the visuals for the books, Jason said, "I'm using that 1980s aesthetic and then bringing it to 2020. reaching into the past to get my foundation, and then taking that forward and into my own direction. I just wanted to go with my gut feeling of how I've always wanted to draw a Batman story, and it flowed from there. Even the designs of Barbara Gordon are taken right out of the classic 1980s Batgirl comics. Batgirl's Batbike is taken directly out of an old school comics from the 70s and 80s. You can read more at dccomics.com. Sci-Fi Wired interviewed Johnny Christmas about his experience working in the comic book industry, including his more recent projects, Crema and Tartarus. When asked about working outside the mainstream publications, Johnny said, "When I first started off in comics professionally, I was honestly afraid of getting a job like on Batman or something, because when you're trying to discover your voice or you're looking for it, you're really unsure of yourself. So if I was plugged into the system of the Big Two, I was afraid that I might not be able to find my voice, because I would be creating someone else's. But I honestly like seeing how the Big Two machine works from the inside. And I'd be open to it now, because I have a lot more confidence in what I want to say and how I want to say it." You can read more at sci-fi.com. CBC Books published a list of 52 picture books slated for release this fall. While the number of offerings is too voluminous to reprint here are some notable inclusions. Our Little Kitchen by Jillian Tamaki is described as a picture book that features a neighborhood with colorful characters who come together in the kitchen to share a meal. Bobby Orr and the Hand-Me-Down Skates is a picture book by Kara Kustra and Bobby Orr, considered one of the greatest hockey players of all time, and illustrated by Jennifer Phelan. The Wrench by Elise Gravel is a book filled with humor as it looks at the life of Bob and what happens when his tricycle is broken. He needs a wrench to fix it, and encounters a series of funny events and happenings along the way. You can read more at cbc.ca/books. And in case you missed it, here are some of the talented Canadian comic book creators and supporters who kindly gave their time for podcast interviews published this past week. Jennifer Cuthbert spoke about her Adventures of Lollipop series, along with The Word on the Street Toronto.
Comic books and graphic novels definitely play a very important role now. Back when I started in the early 2000s, though, it's funny, they were not very in demand at all. And I had a lot of rejections because a lot of publishers said, "Oh, we don't want to publish comic books right now, or graphic novels, we're not interested." But now the school libraries and bookstores can't keep the graphic novels on the shelves. They're always flying off. So comic books and graphic novels have really gained importance over the years, and I think it's just a different way for people to enjoy reading. Like I said, for kids, it's a fun, low-stress way to read.
Jason Sanigan and Jason Lapidus discussed their Group of 7 graphic novel, along with The Word on the Street Toronto.
Yeah, and it it crisscrosses throughout 20th century Canadian history and dives into the very real relationships that many of these characters had post-war, because they kind of moved around the same circles, or they were, found themselves in the same locations based on their contributions and their status during the 20th century. So we're able to kind of flesh out those moments and then use them as narrative devices to showcase how they may have met in the first place, obviously fictionally, but in the First World War.
And Jason Tokowitz offered details about his contribution to the latest issue of Cauldron magazine.
I'm experimenting with different things. For a while, I was using disposable brush pens. Then they led me more into the Turtucky brush pens, the Pentel brush pen, and I really want to get into just using like a traditional brush, like a Winsor Newton or a Raphael. I just really dig that feeling, it just kind of, it was something like mesmerizing about it. When you really get into the inking and you're just in the zone and just doing the brush work and everything. It's just I don't know how else to describe it. It's just you kind of really get into the art.
Thanks for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow on Twitter at True North Comics. And don't forget to like and subscribe to True North Country Comics on YouTube. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2020.